Yep. I for one.
All right.
I got 3 million miles on Delta and 1 million miles on America.
All right. So we're just about ready here we're actually live right now. So we'll make sure that we got all of the streaming services working right now. So we're live on Facebook and LinkedIn for today.
Beautiful.
So, awesome. Welcome everybody who's joining us today. You are watching live the South Florida Tech Podcast, a weekly show where we bring you the awesome, innovative people building our South Florida tech community. Each week, we'll introduce you to one of the Sunshine State's top tech leaders, learn more about who they are, what they do, and have some fun conversation along the way. This podcast is, of course, presented by the Palm Beach Tech Association, a nonprofit dedicated to building South Florida into a tech hub. I'm your host, Joe Russo, the CEO of Palm Beach Tech, and I want to start by giving a huge shout out to our sponsor for the podcast, the Emerge Americas team. If you have not heard of Emerge Americas, this is the premier event for technology in South Florida. Each year, global enterprises, disruptive technology, and elite startups are brought together and highlighted at Emerge's event, Connecting the Americas. It's held in Miami Beach, and to date has hosted organizations from over 40 countries, including over 250 speakers from around the world. Emerge is transforming the South Florida tech hub and community by connecting entrepreneurs, investors, business executives, and decision makers. And they are just a great group of people supporting the mission of building our tech community. So very thankful for them. And I am very excited today to have with us on the podcast, Mr. Pete Martinez. He's currently the chairman and CEO, and forgive me, but Civotech, I believe is the proper pronunciation. They are a company at the leading edge of the intersection of health and technology. He's formerly the vice president of IBM and the senior executive for the South Florida facility, which was in Boca Raton. Pete has had leadership positions on IBM's original personal computer team, robotics, supercomputing, the internet division, Latin America, and the creation of IBM's global business services. He's a graduate University of Miami in engineering and a distinguished alumni as well. In addition, he has completed over 30 patents and publications in computer architecture, optical discs, robotics, health systems, and notably in 2007, on June 22nd, the city of Boca Raton proclaimed it Pete Martinez Day. I'm a huge computer nerd and a guy who's big into history, so I'm really excited for the conversation. Pete, thank you very much for joining us today.
Terrific, Joe. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your history in the tech community here in South Florida.
I keep surprising myself. Never did I ever think when I graduated from University of Miami in 1975 as an electrical engineer that I would be in this kind of ride. Lesson learned is never underestimate yourself. Always give yourself the opportunity and the challenge to proceed and actively grow. Look for every business challenge as an opportunity to take the business forward. I was very blessed to, right out of school, start with IBM back in 1975. My original work was actually doing CPU designs on mini computers. Mini computers is a thing of the past, but it gave me enough of a running start that by 1981, when we announced the original IBM personal computer, I was part of the management team. So I was part of a management team in a very extraordinary time. If we had no idea what was about to happen, but we were an experiment by IBM. So they chose to put us down in Boca Raton as an experiment to go into the home computer market and business computer. So it was a struggle of how do we position itself. First time that IBM had ever created a product from 100% outside companies, except for the keyboard. First time that we ever sold a product through a retail channel. Actually, Sears was one of the first retail stores that we had. First time that we priced a product under $10,000. So a lot of firsts. The original forecast for the IBM personal computer was about 127,000 units worldwide. life of program. We missed by a little bit. But what we learned along the way, and this is a lesson for everybody here, because the value of what I'm about to share with you is the legacy of South Florida as an innovator, and how do we leverage upon that to take it forward to everything that we're doing now. So one of the things that was developed was a culture of innovation, a culture of let's take on the next big thing. So if you look at, there were five very, very key elements that we developed from the PC. The first one is, yeah, there was a whole line of product. It was the original IBM PC, the XT, the AT, the PS2, the ThinkPad, the laptop, and the tablets. Cool. Here's the big impact, although. The number of related industries that were created because of the PC were extraordinary. Think of it, it became the basis for financial systems, for travel systems, for education systems, for scientific systems. It was the guts of ATM machines, the guts of the controller in your gas pump, and on and on and on. So it became an industry standard, and that's a fundamental play. And one more point, the number of related impact that it had on technologies. So think of the price of your memory chip right now. The reason that this thing costs less than $5 is because the original volume that we drove through the volumes of the personal computer, that actually took the cost down extremely well. Think of the cost of processing. So this is the first Intel RISC processor, the reduced instruction set computer, okay? This had over 1 billion transistors in it, and it's the first time that supercomputing capability of a Cray was available in a personal computer through a product that we called Wizard. Think of what happened with display technology. So displays, we made a decision back in 1989 that we were going to replace the vacuum tube displays that we had on our desks and go with an LCD technology. That was betting the farm moment. So we partnered up with Toshiba and said, at a very near point in time, we're going to flip the switch. The original display was 4 inches by 6 inches. Not a very high resolution. It had all kind of failures in it, but we monitor, we drove the volume, we drove the quality to the point that we said, all right, we're flipping the switch over now. So the laptops are going to be all with the new technology, with the LCD technology, but it also says we're going to support the desktop units with units. The reason that we have affordable prices with TVs and phones right now is because of the volumes that we drove originally in the early 90s. Think of the CD technology. We associated primarily with music. The original reason for the CD was to drop the cost of the paper documentation that we had for products. Okay, and think of what happened with all of the wiring that we had for modems and telephone lines and such. They got replaced by both originally token ring and then Ethernet, and now wireless technology. But think of the impact of the personal computer. If it were not for the personal computer, there would have been no commercial internet. What would you connect? How's that?
I love the fact that you brought props on the podcast. For those watching on video, that was great. For those who are listening to this later, Pete actually brought each example of what he was talking about up on the video. It was funny this weekend. My mother, who was taken the COVID-19 epidemic as a really awesome way to do the most massive cleaning of my childhood home ever, and sent me photos of the old custom CDs that I had stacked up from years ago, and I completely forgot about them. But that was actually kind of an interesting realization of like, wow, we've come pretty far so far that I don't even have a CD drive in my computer anymore. And right. Those little USB sticks are, somewhat even outdated now as well. But I think what you hit on was the fact that it all started with the PC. And it all started in Boca Raton, which is pretty neat. Do you ever have any like retrospective moments that kind of hit you and I don't know, maybe a cathartic way that are like, wow, that's kind of neat to see where this has come?
Yeah, there have been multiple moments like that. The first one that you get was the first time that we had Charlie Chaplin doing our commercials. It's an IBM product. For the most part, people didn't even know what an IBM product was. I never had the capability to explain that to my wife. What does your husband do? I have no idea, but he's bringing home the bacon. He's doing pretty good. However, you look at a number of different points where industries get created. The first example was when the IBM PC gets cloned. A whole industry got created. Dell, Compaq, HP, Acer all replicated what we had done. They created a lower cost point, and then they did millions and millions and millions of product. The best compliment is when you're copied, it would also create a tremendous stress on us as a business, but a full industry got created. To the credit of Don Estridge, who was our president for the division, the one thing that he emphasized is let's create that standard. Do not compromise, do not change the architecture, do not change the interfaces, do not change the BIOS of the platform, because the moment you change one wire, it's no longer a standard. Then you got a bunch of one-offs. The reason the PC got implemented inside of an ATM is because of the volume. The moment we had created 50,000 unique machines for a given application, we would have lost the volume capability.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it once before, but I think the big puzzle piece that adds to this is the deal that Bill Gates signed with Microsoft and the licensing deal. You describe that for us, for those who maybe haven't heard that story from your perspective.
Sure thing. We needed an operating system. So we had created the platform. We had the 8088 as the chip. So we went with Intel, and then we were trying to figure out what would be the operating system that would reside right on top of the BIOS. So we went through different kind of conversations. Bill had a software product, a very, very simple one at that point in time, but it provided enough functionality. So he came down to Boca. We negotiated. It turned out, we don't think he really had the rights to the product when he negotiated with us. But to his credit, he didn't sell it to us. He licensed it to us. So by licensing it, he could replicate that and license it to many, many other companies, which he did artfully. So to his credit, brilliant in terms of the negotiation. The thing that I give Bill a lot of credit for, first, he knew his product. He knew his market, he knew his technology, and he knew how to leverage the whole culture of innovation related to that point in time in the early 80s. Brilliant.
So what are some of the other, you hit on a few of them, what are some of the other technologies that came out of IBM and Boca Raton? Obviously the computer, but there are a few other maybe minor little tidbits that we don't realize from years ago.
Before the PC, the first product that we had out of Boca was actually mainframes. We were a test house for mainframes. So in the back of the main site, which is now the brick building, the Boca Raton Innovation Campus, there was a train track, and they would bring in computers that were the size of an auditorium, and we would test them. Little by little, we started getting more missions. So we started into mini computers, System 7 Series 1. And then the Data Master and the System 23. So we started getting much more mission. But on top of that, we were the robotics mission from Boca for IBM. So we had everything from very sophisticated, large robots to very simple 3 degrees of freedom robots as well. So the mission for robotics for IBM was here. We also had a health unit. We had artificial kidneys here in Boca. We had maritime navigation systems. So we had 2 very large robots on the top of the tower, and it was to control avoidance of ships in the sea. To this day, no ship has crashed into the IBM building. So that was one of the key points for us. But also speech recognition. Part of the internet division was formed down here for IBM. Systems for the handicap, which was huge, enabling people that would have never had access either because of visual or physical impairment to have access to computers. So, but there were also a couple of other projects that were very significant. I'm not sure if any of you remember something like this. So this is an Advo card where they had missing children posted, and we would receive this thing on a monthly basis, and it was called Have You Seen Me? So these were pictures of missing children. Using the supercomputing capability that we had within the PC, we started age progressing kids that had been missing for a number of years. And we accelerated the process from a week to a couple of hours. And we increased the number of recovery of kids substantially from about a 50-some% to about a 78% within a year. And that was primarily because of the accuracy and the speed that we provided that center. So these were the things that an IBM would do that you said, oh my God, there was no budget for this. They just said, you know, my president, Jim Canovino, said, just do it, get it done. So we worked with Adam Walsh or John Walsh and got the project into the Missing Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
That's awesome. Ironically, actually, I met John Walsh last year. He filmed outside our office because apparently the alleyway behind our office looked enough like a crime scene to his producers. So I had a really good opportunity to hear about the history of some of that too. So going back here for a second, you were at IBM for over 30 years. You've been in the tech industry in South Florida for over 40. What kept you in South Florida? Why did you decide that I'm gonna be the South Florida tech guy for your whole career?
First, at IBM, it was a candy store. The variety of different products that were available to work on, I just showed you a bunch of them. I worked on all of those. So the ability to navigate from robotics to personal computers to internet to supercomputers, it was phenomenal. So why would I leave? I was offered a number of options to go up to headquarters, go work on projects, lead this, lead that. And I always would say, tell you what, I will commute to those jobs, but I'll fly back home when I have to. So I always made it a point to myself is I will work where I have to work, but I live where I want to live. So there were three things that were very important to me as a business community. First, the talent. Second, the culture of innovation. And third, the business-friendly environment that needed to be provided so for business to yell, and then you can actually access the capital related to it. So it was always a point in time for me personally that said, I love it here. I raised my family here, 4 kids, 8 grandkids. So it was all the right elements for me. I always ducked and weaved. And when IBM started moving the personal computer division out, I said, what job can I do so that I don't have to be necessarily moving? Can I be agile and mobile? Well, consulting. It turns out consulting, you can be mobile. So one of the things that I did was actually start up a group within the IBM consulting organization called Electronic Content Consulting, which later became e-business consulting, which became the IBM Global Business Services. So I was actually one of the founders. Interestingly enough, because I was one of the founders, I get to hire people. If I had to hire people, if I had to apply for the job, I didn't have an MBA. I would have not qualified for the positions. But since I created the business, there you go.
Well, that's
it's got about 60,000 people in it now.
But that's technology in its own right. You know, over the years, degrees have meant a lot less to somebody's skills. But
it's real life. It's real life, and the gray hairs are not because I'm not blonde anymore after the pandemic.
Yeah, I've gotten a few of them in the last few weeks, to be honest with you. I mean, you can't really tell, but they're starting to spot in. So tell us a little bit about your company now. You obviously moved on, and you have a series of projects and companies that you're working on. And I believe I got the name right at the beginning, but it takes me about 2 or 3 times. Okay, perfect. So Civotech is its name.
Exactly. The last project that I ran at IBM was called Project Checkmate. That was a partnership between Scripps and IBM. This was in 2005 when the bird flu, the pandemic, was starting to go around. This was the H5N1. So we partnered up with Scripps back in 2006, 2007 to use the supercomputing capabilities of IBM. This was the Blue Gene supercomputer, the predecessor to Watson, to actually model what the most potential mutations would be of the virus so that we can anticipate and create the vaccines before they became necessary. That was Project Checkmate. I learned so much, but by the way, I got an itch for here's what technology can do in the health space. So formally, I retired from IBM after 32 years. This was back in 2007. And I said, let me see if I can innovate within this space without necessarily carrying 5,000 people on my back. So we created a number of startups, but the startups are actually very mature in the thinking in terms of we brought in heavy duty scientists, technologists, and business people with some very, very strong pedigrees. And what we're doing is innovating at the intersection of health and technology, primarily using artificial intelligence and machine learning to go after some of the most critical and complex issues, genomics. We have a very large project going on with a project called GINA. Okay, GINA is our platform for genomics. And what we're doing is analyzing kids with rare genetic diseases. There are 4,000 kids born that are predisposed to a rare genetic disease in this country every year. So we took processes that used to take about 3 to 4 days by a highly skilled geneticist, and by using the AI, reduced the time factor to 10 seconds. 10 seconds, creating massive flow through. This year, we've already done over 3,300 cases where we think we've helped some kids and their families along the way through some very, very difficult situations. We're also very involved in cognitive testing, awareness. So memory testing, loss of near term or early memory detection loss is actually an early indicator of dementia and Alzheimer's. So we're using a lot of the AI to actually learn what the complexities of the brain are all about and start doing some predictive modeling to actually anticipate. The only thing that we know about Alzheimer's right now is that if we can detect it early enough, we can prepare our families, we prepare our finances and such. We don't think there's a cure just yet, but and on some treatments, but just the awareness factor. So we're taking some of the more complex things, cognitive and genomics, and throwing the power of AI in there. And we're coming up with some insane findings and helping a lot of people along the way.
I got to be honest, some of that was just so big and gaudy in its mission that a little bit of it went over my head, just because just the thought of being able to use technology to better our lives in such a way. I mean, you don't expect that, right? When you grow up, you think science is, kind of progressing one step at a time. But when you hear about those big steps being taken, that's pretty neat.
There's a lesson learned here, by the way, which is, look, the last time I had a biology class was 50 years ago. I know squat and pretend to know nothing about genomics, except that I surround myself with really, really smart people. So it's not necessarily what you know, but your ability to create leadership models that recognize the talent around you and promote their ideas. So my value here is being able to commercialize the science and monetize the knowledge.
I'm going to have to do some more reading later on. because this all sounds really neat. I have a really good friend of mine who is a PhD student at FAU doing a lot of, I think, work on similar lines, where he's trying to match machine learning to brain patterns and, connect the dots to try and figure out, how can we use this technology to help pre-identify or identify, what is going on in somebody's health at a certain time. But we'll have to talk offline about that and nerd out on our conversations. But tell us a little bit more about you. I mean, you've been in South Florida for a number of years. What do you do on the weekends? What do you do for hobbies? What do you try and spend your free time on down here?
Yeah, actually, I challenge myself pretty hard, and it's a combination. I challenge my body, my mind, and my business continuously. So, for instance, when this whole pandemic thing started, I said, "Look, I'm going to come out of here healthier, smarter, and with more business." So this is the way you challenge yourself. In these days, the day never ends in terms of business. You're 100% connected, but the ability to stay focused on your given business model is probably the most important one. I was in a conversation yesterday with the presidents of the universities down here as they were talking about reopening the schools. And it said, here's a prime opportunity to rethink your business model. Because what we're finding out is, one, we can probably trim a level of fat off of what we're doing now. Second, we can anticipate and create a whole lot more focus by adapting our business model. And third, there are new business opportunities cropping up right now that did not exist 2 days ago. And the reason is a lot of the competition has gone away. They will not make it past this cycle. But second, the business has re-engineered itself. So there are opportunities sitting in front of you. I have a great family. I have the kids, the local. I got 8 grandkids, so I spend a lot of time. But I spend a lot of time on my body as well. I swim a lot. I bike a lot. I lift a lot, because you got to have the proper alignment, mind, body, and spirit, all focus driving. So no, I'm 100% nonstop.
And what would you say inspires you, if you had to pick one thing or maybe a couple of things to do the work that you've done over the past many years?
The first was I think there's always an innate thing inside of you that says, it's a quest for learning. It's a quest for not being complacent. I just, my typical approach is to challenge, to question, to better. I get bored very easy if I have to do something more than one time. So that's part of my nature. The second thing is, the moment you start doing things in business and you start coming up with some successes, it actually empowers you and emboldens you to go further. There was nothing like being part of the original IBM personal computer team, because they said, oh my God, we changed the world. And even when we were involved with that, we had no idea that it was going to be something of that magnitude. But when you're able to participate in something like that, the next one is really not that hard, and you aim actually even higher. So the next one, in my case, was the internet. How do you turn what used to be an academic network into a commercial platform for commerce, for education, for all of the wonderful things that we're doing with now? So you have a tendency to set your sights even bigger and bigger every time, being fully conscious of the resources that you have around you. But I'm my worst critic, and I'm also my biggest motivator.
I think those are two common traits that are at least I have. I think a lot of successful people actually have those as well. But with that, one last question for you. What is one call to action that you could have for our South Florida tech community?
We have to now focus. So there's a couple of things that are very wonderful about what's happening here. We got lots of talent. Your leadership is remarkable. Kelly Smollerdrich with the Business Development Board has done an outstanding job of bringing more businesses in. We have to now get a little bit sharper in terms of what technologies we want associated with these businesses. Some of the obvious ones, AI is going to be the future of everything. So no matter what you do, you got to put AI and machine learning in your equation. Health and healthcare seems to be a very natural one for us here. So if you look at the ability to link AI healthcare or health, it's a very interesting play, but not just the traditional medicine approach to healthcare. You actually got to look for the innovators that are focusing on the health. For instance, Dr. Roy, Elizabeth Roy down here in Boca, is a phenomenal model in terms of focusing on healthy people and making them healthier. That's 100% counter of what our medical industry is all about, which is we get compensated. The sicker you are, the more money I make. That's backwards. The model should be make healthy people healthier. So I look for people that are breaking the paradigm and are willing to endorse time, effort, and completely sacrifice themselves in it. So I would say, let's sharpen up the tip of the spear and create some very focused key initiatives within South Florida. Project Checkmate was a perfect one. IBM and Scripps working on the pandemic. Boom, let's go at it. That's a big play. It will consume a lot of technology, a lot of talent, a lot of money. Let's go after it. So I would endorse first the coalition of the talent, but let's create some very, very high impact initiatives that are both heavy in technology, but also heavy in social value. Because for the most part, grandma doesn't know what we do for a living. But the moment you say, grandma, I'm working on Alzheimer's. Ooh, I get it. I'm working on the kids with rare diseases. I get it. So we got to simplify the message. And by simplifying it, we actually got to take on projects that have significant social responsibility. And I think everybody will understand it. Everybody will invest a whole lot more, and we will get a whole lot of community involvement in it.
Awesome. You know, there's so much I think that our South Florida tech community can come together on. And, you know, you've hit the nail on the head. We've done it before. We can keep doing it for years to come. Thank you, Pete, so much for being on today with me. This was pretty neat. One of the cool things I enjoy about the podcast is just being able to talk to people I would, you know, love to just sit down, have a beer with, and talk shop. So this was really nice to have some time to talk with you today. I wanted to also give a shout out to our producing sponsor, Media Ops, down in Boca Raton. They're a premier global media platform for tech communities. They have brands like DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal. Thanks to Alan, Brian, and their team for helping us out with the podcast. And of course, you want to learn more about Palm Beach Tech and our mission of building South Florida into a tech hub, you can go to palmbeachtech.org. You can join as a member. You can get involved. Would love to have your support. So again, thank you to all of our team for putting this together. And thank you, Pete, very much for joining us.
And by the way, anybody that's got great ideas, call me. I'm always open, very, very willing to listen. And I learn tremendously from everybody. So that's part of my contribution.
Yeah. And for those that are looking to get a hold of him, you can find him on LinkedIn, Pete Martinez. He's right there. I mean, that's, I think, how we got in touch the first time too. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everyone.